Chapter 1. Early Religions. The earliest religious rituals seem to have arisen simultaneously with the development of communities of humans. The cave paintings in Lascaux in France, for example, which were the product of bands of hunters and gatherers, may well have had a religious significance. It's been argued by anthropologists that they are often found in the most remote areas of the caves where the strongest magic resided. It's possible that creating an image of an animal, particularly an animal that was in the process of being hunted, was an appeal to the divine to give good fortune to the hunter in his quest for food. With the rise of settled societies between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers, we find the systematic worship of deities and particular powers ascribed to them. Mesopotamian religion was often dark and gloomy. The hero Gilgamesh in the epic poem of the same name does not look forward to any blessed afterlife. Rather, he believes that the afterlife will be full of suffering and sorrow. This may well reflect the tenuous nature of Mesopotamian society. By the time of the rise of ancient Greece, religious rituals and beliefs were well established, and a special order of people, priests, had been set aside to serve as intermediaries between ordinary people and the gods. The gods of Greece were seen as neither especially benevolent or evil. They just were. Often they embodied natural phenomena. Ganymedes, Zeus lightning, Apollo sun, Artemis the moon, Poseidon oceans and seas. Others reflected human concerns and products. Aphrodite love, a rest war, Demeter grain. Athena wisdom, Hestia hearth, Dionysus wine and drunkenness. Unlike later religions, Christianity, Judaism, Islam, the gods were unconcerned with ethical issues. At most, they might punish pride, particularly if it took the form of blaspheming against them. But oftentimes their motivations were unknowable to humans. To mourn avails not. Man is born to bear. Such is, alas, the gods' severe decree. They are blessed and only free. Homer, the Iliad trans. Alexander Pope. People prayed to the gods not for divine guidance, but so that either the gods would grant favor to them or, more often, that the gods would leave them alone. Almost all ancient societies were polytheistic. Even the Jews, who worshipped a single god, Yahweh, did not initially deny the existence of other gods. They were merely exclusive in their worship. Other societies, such as the Greeks, the Romans, and the Egyptians, worshipped a broad pantheon of gods and seemed to have frequently borrowed gods from one another. In the world of the Mediterranean and the East, myths and stories circulated freely, spreading religious beliefs across Europe and Asia. The rites of Dionysus, the god of disorder. The ancient Greeks were polytheists, that is, they worshipped many gods. These included Zeus, lord of all the gods and bringer of thunder, his wife Hera, goddess of marriage, Aphrodite, goddess of love and beauty,
her brother Ares, god of war, and Dionysus, god of wine and revelry. The religious rites of Dionysus were different from those held to honor other Olympian deities. Traditional rites honored the gods and goddesses in temples specially built for that purpose. Dionysus wandered among the people, and his cult celebrated him in the woods. In Dionysian festivals, worshippers became one with the god. This god loved people, he loved dance, and he loved wine. His festivals were like big parties. Dionysus was usually accompanied on his travels by the Maenads, wild followers whose name means madwomen. The Maenads carried a thyrsus, a symbol of Dionysus, and incited people to join Dionysus's cult and participate in his rites. Although everyone was invited, women were the most eager participants in Dionysian festivals. What was a thyrsus? A thyrsus was a long pole or rod covered in grapevines or ivy, adorned with grapes or other berries, and topped with a pine cone. It was a symbol of fertility and a sacred object in Dionysian rites. Dionysus was the god of wine, and his rituals celebrated this drink. It was believed that wine gave people the ability to feel the greatness and power of the gods. Through wine, his worshippers achieved the ecstasy they needed to merge with the god. One of Dionysus's names was Lysios, which meant the god of letting go. But the excesses of his festivals often led to frenzy and madness. Dionysian rites were usually held at night. Women dressed in fawn skins, drank wine, wore reeds of ivy, and participated in wild dances around an image of Dionysus believed to be the god himself. Sometimes the women would suckle baby animals such as wolves or deer, and sometimes they would hunt down an animal, tear it to pieces, and devour the raw meat. Occasionally, the crazed women would tear apart a man or a child in their rites. Wine in ancient Greece. Greeks have been cultivating grapes for winemaking since the late Neolithic period. As Greek society expanded, so too did its trade in grapes and wines. By the time classical Greek civilization was at its height in the 4th century BC, the Greeks were exporting and importing wine from as far away as Spain and Portugal. The wine and tumultuous dancing took worshippers to a state of ecstasy in which they felt the power of the gods. Religious ecstasy was often heightened by sexual ecstasy. The nights were wild and the followers frenzied, and anything was possible. Dionysus takes a wife. Ariadne, daughter of the Cretan king Minos, was in love with the great hero Theseus. When Theseus came to Crete to kill the Minotaur, a terrifying monster, Ariadne fell in love with him at first sight. Unfortunately, the feeling wasn't mutual.
Ariadne helped Theseus achieve his quest, thus alienating herself from her father. She ran off with Theseus, who promised to marry her when they reached Athens. On their journey, they stopped at the island of Naxos. As Ariadne lay sleeping on the shore, Theseus sailed away and left her. She awoke alone and friendless on a strange island, abandoned by her lover. But Dionysus saw her and was struck by her beauty. He fell in love with her instantly and made her his wife. Some myths say the couple resided on the island of Lemnos. Others say he took his bride to Mount Olympus. Offspring of the god, Ariadne and Dionysus had many children, including Enopion, Phanes, Staphylos, Thoas. Enopion became the king of Chios. Phanes and Staphylos accompanied another Greek hero, Jason, on his quest for the Golden Fleece. Thoas became the king of Lemnos. Madness unleashed. Although the Dionysian rites were popular, not everyone accepted them. Some held that Dionysus wasn't truly a god, a claim that stirred his wrath. Just as Hera had punished Dionysus with madness, he punished those who offended him in the same way. Then he'd watch the afflicted mortal destroy himself. Dionysus, though a good time guy, had a short temper and a creative imagination. His punishments were cruel and brutal, and not just for the one being punished. Sometimes, innocent bystanders also got hurt. The madness of King Lycurgus, king of Thrace, banned the cult of Dionysus in his kingdom. When he learned that Dionysus and his Maenads had arrived in Thrace, Lycurgus tried to have Dionysus imprisoned, but the god fled to the sea, where he was sheltered by the nymph Thetis. The king's forces did manage to capture and imprison some of Dionysus's followers. In retaliation, Dionysus inflicted Lycurgus with madness. With the king unable to rule, the imprisoned followers were released. But that wasn't the end of the story. The mad Lycurgus mistook his son for a vine of ivy, a plant sacred to Dionysus. In a rage, the king hacked his own son to death. To make matters worse, Dionysus plagued Thrace with a drought and a famine. An oracle revealed that the drought would continue until Lycurgus was put to death. The starving Thracians captured their king and took him to Mount Pangaeus, where they threw him among wild horses, which dismembered and killed him. Dionysus lifted the drought, and the famine ended. A god imprisoned. In Thebes, the young king Pentheus banned Dionysian rites. In defiance of the king's decree, Dionysus lured the city's women, including Pentheus's mother and aunts, to Mount Cithaeron, where they took part in a frenzied rite. Pentheus refused to recognize Dionysus's divinity and had Dionysus imprisoned in a dungeon. But the dungeon couldn't hold Dionysus. His chains fell off, and the doors opened wide to release him. Next, Dionysus convinced the king to spy on the rites held on Mount Cithaeron, promising him spectacular sights and a chance to witness sexual acts.